How's it, everyone? The steampunk genre is like a high-tech Victorian era type construction technique with lots of rivets, steam valves, gears, and all sorts of levers. For example, if you watch the movie The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen starring Sean Connery, it's a really good steampunk movie with some cool cars, devices, and a super cool submarine. You must check it out. Let's start building a steampunk spaceship. This is the default screen. So let's first of all get rid of the camera. So I right click on the camera and shift and right click on the light. Now let's move the two of them to another layer. Let's call that layer 6. Now let's change the view. We need a right view, but let's make it a right ortho view. Now we don't need this cube, so we select it by right clicking on it and then hitting delete. Click on that, it's gone. We need to move the cursor to the center, so we go Shift S and we go cursor to center, and it pops to the center of the 3D window. Now we go add mesh and we put in a UV sphere. What we're going to do is we're going to model this UV sphere to make the hull of the spaceship. We don't need all these segments, so we can bring that down to 12, and the same with the number of rings, and it's just a little coarser. Now I need to have it rotated in line with the y-axis, the green line. So the way to do that is I hit R. I need to rotate it on the x-axis and 90 degrees. There we go. Now if I go tab, it goes into edit mode. I actually want to strip off a little section at the back, so you hit A to deselect. Now I need to be sure that I select the vertices that are behind the sphere, and the way to be able to do that in one go is to put on X-ray mode. If I just turn the ball slightly, you'll see the lines in the background. So let me just get that view right again. I then go B for box select. Yeah, I think I can do it there. B for box select and hit delete, and I delete all those vertices. So if I turn it, you can see what I've done. So I need to go out of X-ray mode, makes things just a little too confusing. So I want to select this ring here. So to do that I go Alt and a right click, and I've selected that ring. Now I want to modify this a little bit. Oh, actually before I do that, I actually want this shape to be a bit more like a rugby ball. So let me just go out there for the moment and into object mode, and then let me scale this along the y-axis and change it slightly. I wonder why where that comes from. It's the first time I've seen that. Shows the original shape. Okay, I tab back into edit mode, go back into right ortho view. I now hit E for extrude and scale, and I scale it in. If I turn it, you can see what I've done there. Scaled it in, and then we go back there. Perhaps we go hit Z to wireframe mode, and then I go E for extrude again, and I go Y, in other words on the Y axis, bring it right in. I hit E for extrude again, S for scale, and scale that in a lot smaller, and then I can hit E for extrude again, Y along the Y axis, and just pull it right out again. Now I'll need to tidy this lot up, so let me go out of wireframe mode. I hit Z, and let me go out of and into object mode. And you know, while I'm here, I might as well smooth this out a little bit. If I go to my properties panel, I select modifier, add modifier, subdivision surface, and I change my view to 2 to smooth that out a little bit, and I can get it very nicely smooth by hitting smooth shading, and there you are. But the rounded edges here is not what I want. I actually prefer to have a more crisp appearance. So let's take a look, go back into edit mode, and let me throw a ring around here. And now to do that, I hit Control. I position my cursor first of all. I hit Control R and left click, and it turns yellow, and then I can slide it up to the edge. I might as well put a bit of a crease in there, and to do that I need the transform panel. Go right to the top of the transform panel, you got this mean crease here, and I drag that to just above 5 or so. You'll see what it's done here. It's made a neater crease. Let me go A for deselect, tab out, and you can actually see the neat looking crease. Now let's do the other one as well. Back into edit mode. I'll reposition my cursor. I hit Control R, and there is my ring, and I left click and I slide it right up to the edge, and at the same time add the crease. Now if you peek down in there, let's get a little closer. I'll need to do the same here. So I go position my cursor, I hit Control R, left click, and slide it all the way in and add a little crease. Now if I peek down there, down the middle, you can also see here it's rounded over there. So let's do the same and position my cursor, Control R, throw a little loop there, and I bring it all the way out and left click, and then put in a neat little crease there. So if I go out back into object mode, you can see that it all looks a lot neater, more crisp, the edges. Right, let's go back to side view. Now that's all on the whole for the moment. The next thing we're going to tackle are the boosters. So to do that, we're going to go into another layer. So layer 2, we take the cursor and get it back to the center. To do that, we go Shift S, cursor to center, and there she is. The booster, we need to add a mesh UV sphere, and it's set at 12, 12, and 1 diameter. And then I rotate that on the x-axis, R, X, 90 degrees. It turns it around for me, and I actually want to get rid of this section here. So first of all, go into tab into edit mode, hit X-ray, hit A to deselect, and then B for box select. I select that back section and then hit delete and vertices, and that gives me that kind of shape. So might as well smooth this out. So with it selected, we go add modifier, subdivision surface, change my views to 2, it's already much smoother, and then I hit smooth shading, and there you are, all neat together. So let's get back to our right ortho view, and let's go into edit mode. Now I want to have some sort of scallops here on the edge of the boosters. It makes it look a lot more interesting. So to do that, I need to throw some loops around here. So I go position my cursor, I go Control R, and just move my cursor a little bit until it gives me a ring in the direction I want it, and when I'm happy with it, I hit left click and it positions a ring over there. Another one over here, I go Control R, I move my cursor until it's a vertical line, shift it and left click, and the same here, R and left click to position it, and the same there, R, and then the last one over here, R, left click and position it. Let's zoom in just a little closer, and now I select all of them. So I hit Alt, right click to select that loop, then Shift Alt because I want to do a number of them. Select that one, that one, that one, and that one. And now I hit S. Oh, wait a minute. Let's move this cursor more towards the center. Now I hit S for scale, and I scale it in a little bit, like so. Now it's a bit rounded, so it'd probably be a good idea to put in a crease. Since I've got all those rings selected, I might as well do a crease for the whole lot of them. Drag it along, and there you are, you've got your crease. Let me take the X-ray off, it just makes things less confusing. Now I want to tidy up the edges here a little bit, so I'm going to do Alt, right click to select that edge, then Shift Alt, next one, and the last one. So let me get back to a neat right ortho view. The first thing I want to do is put in a neat crease there and scale it up a little bit up, and then I want to drag the whole lot of them so that it sort of provides a more rounded surface. Let me take this one here, just this one, and scale that up a little bit and drag it down. Let's have a look at the shape. Yes, that's a bit more of what I'm looking for. Might as well lengthen this as well a little bit, so I hit scale on the y-axis, and there we go. I think I inadvertently got an incorrect instruction in there, so I'm just taking that off. Now I want to give this, it's very thin, so I want to give it a little bit of thickness. So to do that, I need another modifier. This one is called solidify. The moment I hit solidify, you can see it thickens slightly because the setting is let me just close the subsurf. The thickness is set at 0.01. It's not enough, so I'm going to add a little bit to that. So maybe about 2. No, that's too much. You start getting this sort of distortion here. So let's take off a little bit. There we go. All right, that'll be the booster. So I think that's good enough. Now let's fit the booster to our rocket ship. So I go Shift and I select the other panel, the first panel, and hook my booster and pull it out the back. Now you can see that the booster is obviously too big for this little ship, so I'm going to just scale that down, and I go S and scale it down to about there. And the first one, I think we're just going to connect it straight on there. Let's have a little look what it looks like. Yeah, I think that's a sort of a reasonable look. If I go Control 1, menu pad 1, it's a back view, and I can see what that looks like. If I hit Z, it gives you an idea of the size of the booster compared to to the rocket ship. So that's one in the middle, but I'm also going to put down a ring of boosters around there. It's going to look quite serious. Right, so the next thing I want to do is I want to put in the other boosters, and I want to do some modifications on that. So I'm going back to layer 2, and then I hit Shift D, and in doing so I've made a copy of that booster, and I pull that copy up above, and let's see proportion wise what it looks like. So I want to get back to layer 1 as well, and I bring it back. Now let's take a view from the front, and Control 1 a view from the back. Let's just go solid and pull this a little closer. Right, now back to side view, and let's just go to layer 2. There's a modification I need to make for the fuel line that comes in there, which then later on is going to connect to a ring. So I need to make a small little modification here, and this is the modification for the fuel line. So with my booster selected, I hit Tab to go into edit mode. I need to put in a ring over here, and then slide this existing ring to create a narrow tube. You'll see in a minute. I go Control R and move it very close to the existing one, and then I go Alt right click to select the inner ring. Now I want it to slide, and it won't do so by its own volition now, because there aren't any rings inside this, and besides that was already been set. So I need to hit Tab and slide, type in slide. So the one I'm looking for is edge slide. So now I'll be able to let it slide in up to the point where I think it's a suitable size for the fuel line, but I need to get rid of these vertices here. Let me get rid of this widget as well. Click, get rid of the widgets, is sort of in the way at the moment. Now I just need to delete that central vertex there, and now it opens it up for me. Now I'll go Alt right click to select this ring and change my view, and now I hit E for extrude, and I extrude, oops, I should have hit E for extrude and Y so that it would. Alright, let me just deselect that and do this again. Right click to select it, change my view, hit E for extrude and Y in the Y direction. Keep it nice and neat. It's my little tube. Now I need to also tidy this up, so I need to put in another ring here. Ring, tidy it up, A for deselect, and let's have a little look-see at that. Yeah, I think that that looks quite reasonable. Now, next step is we need to create a ring. So first of all, let me move the cursor right to the center. There it is, and reposition the screen. So to do that, I do Shift and middle mouse, and then I drag my mouse around to position the image inside the 3D screen as I want it. Actually, before we do the next step, it's probably a good idea to save our work first. It's a good habit to regularly save your work, because in case you lose your machine, you also lose your work unless you save it. So go File, Save As, and you get this is your where your document is going to be kept in that folder. And let's say we want to call it Spaceship Blend and save as Blender file. Now from here onwards it knows where the file is and where it's being kept, so all you need to do if you want to save is hit Control S. It comes up, and all you need to do is just left click on that and it'll continue to save it for you. Alright, so next we want to do is make a ring, a firm ring, which will be attached to the hull of the spacecraft, but also to the boosters, to hold the boosters in place, and also provide a connect to the fuel line. You'll see in a minute. So to do the ring, we go Add. We actually use a curve for that, and we use a circle. So the circle is lying flat. We need it to stand up vertically, so let's rotate it on the x-axis 90 degrees. There it is. If we look at it from front view, that's what it looks like. And we might as well increase its size just so that it fits exactly right to the center of that booster over there. Now we need to go into edit mode. The moment you go into edit mode, you see that there's the ring, and here are levers that I can control the shape of the ring. I don't want to actually change it, so let's leave it at that. The next thing I also need to do is here go to the curves and change it to 2D, and then you see that it fills this plane. It's actually just like a sliver. Let's go back to the front view. Now I need to make a copy of this, so I go Shift D, it duplicates it, and then having made sure that your cursor is in the center, I then hit S for scale, and I scale it to the size that I'm looking for. Somehow the circle, oh yes, I should have changed it. So I right click to select these four and scale it out. There we go. So basically at the top and the bottom of the booster, first layer of the booster, is about right. That should put the fuel line exactly in the center over there. Now I need to give this a little bit of thickness, so let me turn it to a side view, and let's give this an extrude of 0.1. So that gives you the depth. I think that should be enough. 0.1 is enough. But I also want to give it a bit of a bevel. So let's give it a bevel of, let's try 0.03 and see what that gives us. There you go. You got a nice bevel there. Now any changes that you make, for example, I'm going to put holes through here now. It will adopt those properties and put a bevel on the holes as well. You'll see in a minute. So let's change my view to a front view, and I actually am going to copy this inside circle, reduce it in size, and position it where I want. Watch. Select the inside and shift select the entire ring. So what I've done now is select the entire ring. If I go into object mode, you can see. Back into edit mode. So I go duplicate, and then having ensured that my cursor is in the center, I hit S for scale and I scale it down. Basically I'm making a very small little hole. And if I now put my widget on, I can pull it up directly, and basically it's just put in a perfectly beautiful little hole. You can actually see the fuel line over there. So now I want to put every 30 degrees I actually want to have one of these. So I'm going to duplicate that. First of all, make sure my cursor is in the center, and the other thing I need to do is ensure that the pivot point is at the 3D cursor. In other words, it would it would rotate around this point here, and then I can position these holes around the circle. So let me show you. I go Shift D to duplicate. Then I go hit R for rotate 180 degrees. 180 degrees. So now I've got a hole in 180 degrees and at 0 degrees. So let me select both of them. I right click to select and Shift right click to select and hit L. Nope, that didn't work. Right, the easy way to do this is hit C for circle select. C for circle select, make sure the circle covers all those points, and that one. And I hit Shift D to duplicate those two. And now I want to do it at 30 degree increments. So I rotate 30 degrees. Oops. You can see what happened here is the cursor is moved out of line, and that's why it's thrown those two out. So what I'm going to do is just going to delete those two, and we start again. First of all, make sure my cursor is at the center, and cursor to center. There we go, and it'll pivot around that point. Excuse me, and then I reselect the two holes. Now that I've got that done, I hit Shift D to duplicate them and rotate 30 degrees. And there you are. I just Shift D to duplicate them and rotate 30 degrees. I hit Shift D to duplicate them and rotate 30. Now this time I should actually not do that, right? So let me Control Z to undo that. What I do now, yeah, that's quite right. Shift D, rotate 30 degrees. Shift D, rotate 30 degrees. Shift D, rotate 30 degrees. There we go. Got neat holes at 30 degree increments all the way around our ring. So now I select my ring and I pull it ever so gently directly onto the fuel, and there you can actually see the fuel line is in the middle. Perfect. So now I need to add some more boosters. So let's take that booster and select it. And then what we do is we duplicate it. So Shift D, duplicate the booster for me, and rotate it 180 degrees. So I've got two boosters. Now I get this one was already selected. I Shift select that one, and now I want to do them at 60 degree increments. So I Shift D to duplicate, rotate 60 degrees, and then once again Shift D, rotate 60 degrees. And there we go. We got 6 neat boosters. All the properties of each is carried over, and that's what it looks like from behind. Neat, huh? Okay. Now we need to have, well, let's just see what this lot looks like with the rocket ship. So I hit Shift and select layer 1, and it pops it into position. There we go. That looks pretty neat, I reckon. And what we now need to do is we need to make some way secure the ring to the rocket ship. So what we've got is we got the rocket ship with a fuel line that runs into the ring, and the ring should now be attached via bars, which are also fuel lines, to the main hull of the rocket ship. So how are we going to do that? We go just to layer 2, We don't need the rocket ship. Let's take a front view, and now let's make a bar. So first of all, let's deselect everything, and we have the cursor is in the center. Let's get ourselves, we add a mesh, and this one will be a cylinder. So we need to trim the cylinder down, it's a bit too thick, so we can keep the number of vertices. Maybe we could make that 12, and give it a radius of 0.1. Still a bit too thick. Maybe 0.05. Yeah, that's a bit better. And the depth, I might as well just scale it on the Z-axis. SZ, and scale it like that. So let's get a front view and move it about there. We'll need to shorten that a little bit further, so scale it on the Z scale. Yeah, so put it about there. Let's go back to the side view, and let's hit Z, and then we position it slap bang in the center. Now maybe it's not a good idea to have the support bars in the same position where the boosters are, but rather over there. So that distance from there to there is 30 degrees. I've got my 3D cursor as the pivot point. My 3D cursor is in the center, and now I go rotate 30 degrees. There you go. So now it's very simple. I hit Shift and D, rotate, and the next one I want over here, that's 60 degrees, rotate 60 degrees, and Shift D, rotate 60 degrees, Shift D, rotate 60 degrees, Shift D, rotate 60 degrees, and the last one, Shift D, rotate 60 degrees. There you go. So these bars will now hold the ring and the boosters onto the spaceship. So let's see what that would look like. If I hit Shift and add layer 1 and turn it, and there you are. You can see your booster held in position. Okay. Now let's put a nose cone on our ship. Let's go to layer 1. There she is. Right click to select. Hit Tab to go into edit mode. Now I need to put a ring here. So Control R. There she is, and I'll move it closer to that ring. Let me zoom in a little bit. Alt, right click to select that, and let's just put on X-ray mode and box select so that I've got all the vertices in the front. So side view, let me put my widget in place and pull it out a little, and then S for scale, scale it up. Here's the beginning of my nose cone. Now I need to tidy this lot up here, so go Control R, throw a loop, and pull it right in. Let me hit N and put in a nice crease over there as well. There we go. Now I need to select this and pull it back, and there you are, you'd have a cone. So A to deselect, Alt, right click, B for box select, and I've got all my vertices selected, and let me just pull the nose cone back. I can tidy it up a little. Control R, put one in there and pull it right up to the edge. Let me tab to get out of it, and there you can see a neat, crisp looking nose cone. Next we do the steampunk rivets. So I select my my hull, I go to top view, that is numpad 7, and then I go add curve this time, and a path curve that I want to select. There's the curve over there. I rotate it and pull it to the outside of the hull, just outside the hull. I hit tab to go into edit mode, and you see the direction of the arrows. That's the direction of the path, and that'll make a little bit more sense in just a little while. Now I can manipulate the curve of this path with these handles. You can see the little handles over there, and basically I want to move it as close as possible to follow the contour of the hull. So I just go G for grab, and I pull it closer to the hull, and I nurse it that way until I have it in the position that I want it. So you need to work on that and tweak that for a little while until you get it right. So I'm going to do this off screen and get back to you in a minute. Right, there you can see the path. It's running close alongside the hull. Let me zoom in a little closer so you can see. So there are some of the points, and there you can see the line running close along the side of the hull, which is sort of what I've been looking for. Maybe this one can come a little bit closer. But there you are. That's basically it. That'll work just fine. Let me get back to a side view. And next what I want to do is I want to make a rivet. Ultimately I want to get the rivet to be rivets to be manufactured all along the side of the hull. You'll see how that works in a minute. We go from edit mode into object mode. I choose a new layer. I move my cursor to the center, Shift S, cursor to center. I then add a mesh. This time I'm going to use a cylinder, and the settings on the cylinder are six vertices. If I zoom in a little closer, you see what I'm talking about. 6 vertices, a radius of 0.01. Oops, come back here. Alright, there we go. A radius of 0.01 and a depth of 0.1. Let me get a front view. It's actually a little bit too long for the rivet, so I'm going to scale it on the Z-axis. Scale it right down. Now I need to go into edit mode, and then I actually want to put a bit of a bevel on it. So I go to a modifier here, the bevel modifier, settings there, 0.1 and angle, and that's the bevel that I'm looking for. That's fine. Now I need to get that back to layer number 1, so I go shift and layer 1, and my rivet is in there somewhere, so I need to pull it out. There's the rivet, bring it down and get it there to that starting position. Reposition the screen a little bit and bring it right up close. I want to rotate this on the y-axis by 90 degrees. I want to rotate the rivet by 90 degrees. Rotate on the y-axis 90 degrees, and then I want to rotate it so that it's in alignment with the hull. And let me zoom in a little closer. So there's my rivet and there's my path. I select my path now. I hit tab to go into edit mode, and I select the first point on my path. Now I want to move my cursor to there, so I go shift S and move the cursor to selected. There's my cursor. Now I tab out of that, select my rivet, and I want my rivet to move to where my cursor is. So I go shift S, and so selection to cursor, bam, and there you are. How neat is that? What I want to do next is I actually want this rivet to run along this path, and to do that I need to parent the rivet to the path. So let me get a little closer. I have selected, right click to select the rivet, and then shift right click to select the try again, right click to select the rivet and right click to select the path. I then go Control P and I choose amongst all these choices follow the path, and now I can let it run along that path. Let's have a look at it. I have set my animation here at 100 at the end point, and if I then go Alt A, you can see the rivet run along the outline following that curve exactly, and that's exactly what I want. Right, so I hit escape to reset my rivet at the start point, and now I select my rivet, right click to select my rivet. I then go here to my properties panel and I choose object. Let me close down all these panels. I don't need any of those, and the only one I need is duplication. Is normally left on none, but I want to select frames. And now notice what happens the moment I click on speed. Look at the rivets. The moment I click on, I get hundreds of rivets that are placed all along the outer edge, but that's just far too many, so I need to turn off some of them. So let's say I only want to render every third one. I go here and I change that to 2, and now every third rivet is made renderable. Right, next up I want to make all my duplicates real. The best way to do that is hit the space bar, and there it is, make duplicates real, shift control A. So select that, and all those are now real. So I now need to shift S and I get my cursor back to the center. So let's just see if it'll rotate. Yes, that's absolutely fine. Now I want to put a row of rivets every 60 degrees, so go Shift D to duplicate that row, then I hit R for rotate and type in 60, and there's the next row. And then I do the same, Shift D, R for rotate 60, Shift D, R for rotate 60, Shift D, R for rotate 60 degrees, and then the last one, Shift D, R for rotate 60 degrees, and there they are. So let's see what our steampunk spaceship looks like now. So we go that, include it. So now we've got some rivets, some real cool looking rivets. We've got ring, we've got boosters, and we've got a nose cap. So next let's create a steampunk nautical fin. It goes at the top here. Create this almost like submarine like effect. To do that we go back here, add and curve, and we get a circle. There is the circle. Let's rotate that on the y-axis by 90 degrees. And before I forget, what I'd like to do is actually make a duplicate of this. So let me just tab into edit mode and duplicate it and leave it there for a little while. Let me just scale it down. Leave it there for a little while I work with this one. If I select each one of the sides, I can grab it and I can move it into position. Now I don't need this bottom handle, so I'm going to delete that, select it and delete that, and you see how these handles move in. I actually want to change them to vector handles. You'll see why in a minute. I select them, so right click to select, shift right click to select the next one. I hit a V and I can choose a handle type. In this case I want vector, and turns it in like that. Now if I also select this, go G for grab, I can position this approximately where I want it, and I can begin to tweak it the way I want it. So left click just to get my cursor position there, and I can pivot around there. Right click to select there, and R for rotate, and I rotate that up into position there. Similarly here, select, grab, position it over there. Right click to select, grab, and I'll move that curve right up there. This is quite a handsome curve. Right, nice and bold. Oh, I forgot. I need to go into Bezier and change that to 2D. And let's see if this will work. I deselect with A, C select, ring select, and grab this and pull it over. Yes, it does make a hole, which is exactly what I wanted. Now let's give this some thickness, because the blade is very thin. The keel is very thin. So let's get a frontal view, and here under modification, geometry modification, I can extrude. So let's make that 0.1, and that's nice. And we still have a hole, but I think we need to put in a bevel just to make it nicer. So let's click there and make a bevel of say 0.03. Let's see what that looks like. Yes, very nice, and it's got a bevel on the hole as well. That's exactly what we're looking for. Now let's get a side view, and let's make a few more of these holes. So I duplicate that and bring one down here, put pivot in the center and scale it down a little bit. Now duplicate it again, put a pivot in the center and scale it down around that point. Then I'll duplicate that, and we make a much larger one here, scale that up. Oops, we put a pivot in the center, scale it, and just tweak it into position. And let's do the last one, duplicate that, move it down there, pivot in the center, scale it down, and let's see what that looks like. Let's just go out and have a look. Let's move the cursor to the center, and I see the origin is there as well. Let's move the origin to the 3D cursor. Doesn't want to. And origin to 3 to origin. Let's move this 3D cursor to the center, and then origin to the 3D cursor. Doesn't want to move. Right, let's tweak this a little bit. It's not quite right. Get that and move it out of the way. We're going to have to L, scale that down a little bit. And there we go. That's a pretty neat fin. Looks very ominous. Okay, so far so good. Well, next what we're going to do is we're going to create some hatches. We're going to put a biggish one there and a couple of smaller ones down there. Make our steampunk spaceship even more authentic looking. Right, next step, we want to put in the portholes or scuttles, if you prefer. So we're going to put a large one over there and 3 smaller ones on the sides, on both sides of the hull. Right, so let us select a new layer and add a mesh and a UV sphere. And let's reduce the number of segments to 8. Let's do the same with the number of rings. And let's go into edit mode and A to deselect and X-ray mode and then box select, and let's select that and delete those vertices. So if we have a top view of that, that's what it looks like. Go back to a front ortho view. Let us ring select the bottom layer and get a top view, and then hit E for extrude and scale it from the center point outwards. There we go. Let's go to side view and pull it down so that it's on the same level. Next, I actually want to lower this dome. This is going to be the port hole. Let me go tab out in to object mode and scale that down on the Z scale S, and scale it on the Z scale and bring that down. There we go. That looks more like a porthole. Tab into edit mode. Let me just reposition this nicely, and then extrude that on the Z scale and bring it down. It looks more like a porthole now. There we go. Now let's tab out and let's put a modifier on this, the subdivision surface modifier. Change the view to 2 and optimal display, and then let's smooth that out, and there you go. You got a bit of a porthole starting to appear there now. Now let's just tidy that up a little bit. We go tab into edit mode and let's put a ring over there. Control R, and I want it down there, and I can just pull it down. Let me scale this, change the view a little and tweak that down. Now I'd like a sort of a more crisp, or mind you, let me go in, and there where I've got this ring, let me put a nice crease in there just to make it more crisp. Then I want to do the same for the outer edge, so we go A to deselect, control, position my cursor, control R, move it around so I can it around, and then move it out towards the edge, and also give that a nice crease. Let me go back into side view and tab out into object mode. Now you can see what it looks like. Alright, so we got the basic porthole. Now there would be some studs or rivets all the way around, so let's make one. So basically what we need to do is just copy this and scale it down and use that as a kind of a rivet. So we go Shift D to copy that, and then let me just grab it and move it out so you can see it, and then I need to move the cursor to the center, so go Shift S, cursor to selected, and there it goes. And now it'll pivot on that point, so I hit S for scale and I scale it right down to a small, like a rivet, and then I can grab it and position over there. We take a side view and let me hit Z so that I can see the wireframe mode, and Shift S, and I move my cursor to selected, and then I just pull it right up there. and that should do it. I hit, beg your pardon, hit Z, bring it back. Nope, it's not quite through yet. There we go. So let's take a top view, and let's move my cursor to the center, and A to deselect, and let me just take a little look at what it looks like. Does that look reasonable? Yes, I think so. Let's take a top view. Maybe a touch too large, so maybe just scale it down ever so slightly. I must move my cursor back there, cursor to selected, and scale it down just a little bit more. I think that's about it. Let me get a side view, and I need to pull it back up again ever so slightly. Alright, top view, and A to deselect, Shift S, cursor to center, and now I need to set the cursor as my pivot point for the next step, and I go there to the 3D cursor. Now what I want to do is I want to copy this and put a number of rivets all the way around, and there's a nice easy way to do that. And what we do is we select that rivet, and we hit D for duplicate, and then R for rotate, and 180 degrees. I want to put it right at the bottom there, 180 degrees, enter. And now if I shift select, I got both of them, so now I can do a 90 degree rotation, copy, and a rotation of 90 degree, and put another 2 there. So I go shift D to duplicate, R 90 degrees, and there we are. I've got another 2 in place. So I can then shift select and select those 2, and then add another 30 degrees. So it's shift D to duplicate, rotate 30 degrees, and I do exactly the same. Shift D to duplicate, rotate 30 degrees, and there you are. In a very short time I've got all of them done. Now I want to join the rivets to the scuttle, or the porthole. So I need to select them all. I've selected them all, and I hit shift and J for join, and that should join them all. So if I select the board and go hit G for grab, everything is in one piece. Now I'll need to scale this down because it's probably a little too large, so I hit S for scale, and I can scale my whole port down. Now I need to make it part of the ship, so I go shift and I open up the other layers, or actually let me just use the one layer. I need to show where the rivets are. Okay, so layer 1, layer 4 where the rivets are, and layer 7, which is now the port. And let me pull the port out. There it is. Let me get a front view, and let me go shift S and cursor to selected. I've selected the porthole, so I hit R for rotate, change it to about the same angle, and then I can let me change the global to local, and then I'm able to pull it up in that position. Now it's a matter of doing a little bit of tweaking until you get it right. So I'm going to rotate it and then eventually position it. Now at the same time, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make some copies of this and position another 3 smaller ones along the length of the port hull. But I'm going to just sign it for a bit and just tweak this one until it's in position before I get back to you. Right, after a considerable amount of tweaking and grabbing and moving, I've finally positioned the porthole into a position which I find satisfying. So let me get a frontal view, and what I want to do now is I might as well copy this and rotate that copied version for the porthole on the starboard side of the hull. So let me just reposition that slightly. So I've got it. First, I need to make sure my cursor is in the center. So I go Shift S and cursor to center, because that'll be the pivot point. Remember, I'd set my pivot over here. That'll be the pivot point for my rotation. So I go to copy it. Copy the porthole. I go Shift D, and that's duplicated it, and R to rotate, and I rotate the duplicate version to the other side, and then position it about the same spot on the opposite side of the hull, and there she goes. So let's just deselect, and let's have a look at the other side of the hull. I can look at the starboard side by hitting Control and 3, and it just gives me the opposite view. There we go. That looks sort of reasonable. Just rotate it ever so slightly. Move the Shift and select cursor to selected, and just rotate it ever so slightly until I'm satisfied with the result. Let's say that's okay. Right. Let me move my cursor back to the center. Cursor to center. And now what I want to do is I want to duplicate this and make a copy. And then as I've made and positioned the copy, what I would do is duplicate it and position it on the other side. So I go Shift D, and I've duplicated it, and I move the duplicated version out. Let me get a top view, and let me go Shift S and cursor to selected, and rotate it and pull it out through the whole front view. Now this requires quite a lot of tweaking, so I'm going to do this off screen as well. But of course, the other thing that you must remember is that we need to scale this down. So we scale that down so it's a smaller porthole. Alright, the rest I'll do off screen, and then I'll get back to you in a sec. And after a lot more tweaking, I managed to get the other 3 portholes in, duplicated and placed in position. What I still need to do is put the additional 3 portholes on the opposite side of the hull. So I prefer to do it this way. There are a variety of ways to do it, but this is the way I prefer. I select just one porthole because they are out of alignment, and then get a frontal view and hit Shift D to duplicate it. After I've made sure that my cursor is in the center, I can never forget that. Shift D to duplicate it, and hit R to rotate, and then move my cursor around, move my mouse around, and position that porthole on the opposite side. Just basically making sure that gap there is the same as that gap there. The rest the system sorts out. Then I'll take my side view again. I'll select the second porthole, do exactly the same. Shift D, go for a frontal view. Oops, what happened there? That's a bit of a mess. Messed that one up. So I'm just going to select that and delete that. And let me try again. Right click to select it. My cursor is in the center. I go for a frontal view. Shift D to duplicate, and hit R to rotate, and I rotate it around to about there. And then a side view, I right click to select the last one, and frontal view, and I hit, if I hit Z, I can actually see it in the background through the wireframe. Shift D to duplicate it, and R to rotate, and there goes my copied version to the opposite side. I can use the grill as a reference point. So let's have a look at what it looks like. So go Z to get a solid view, and that's my port side of the hull. But if I go Control 3, I can see the starboard side of the hull. And that looks fairly okay. Alright, the next thing we want to do is we want to put on a nice exaggerated nose antenna. As far as modeling is concerned, we've only got two more things to do. The one is to put in the antenna, a nice elongated antenna, and the second is a little hatchway which we'll put over here somewhere. Then we're ready for texturing and so forth, but that'll be another tutorial. Right, let's start with the antenna. So right click to select the hull, and I want to focus on the front portion here, the cap. So I hit tab for edit mode and focus on the cap. So let me just take X-ray off for a moment. What I want to do is I want to create a little circle here and then extrude that out. But I can't just do it this way. I have to use this ring here and slide it on. I can't just do that. I have to put another ring here to maintain the shape of the cone. So let me start off by Control R to ring select, and I bring that ring. It'll slide along the contour of the cap as close as I can to the next ring. Now, if we go Alt and right click to select the inner circle, I can grab that one and slide it in. But I wanted to follow the contour of the hull, so I have a special instruction for that. So we go spacebar and slide. I can't remember exactly what it is. Edge slide. There it is. Hit edge slide, and now if I move my cursor, it'll slide along the contour of the hull up to the point where I want to select it. Neat, hey? Okay, let me get a frontal view and let me get this widget out the way. It's just too much for the moment, and I need to go and select those inner vertices there as well. So I go Shift right click to select the inner vertices, and then side view, and now I can extrude, but I want to keep it neatly along the y-axis and y, and then I just move it out. And let me zoom out a little bit. G for grab, and along the y-axis just continue it, so it's quite a long antenna. And then I scale that in. S. Let me rather move my cursor right to the front there. Shift S, cursor to select it. So it moves my cursor right now. It'll scale on that point. S for scale, and I bring it down to a fairly neat, sharp point. Now I need to tidy this lot up, so what I do is I hit A to deselect, position my cursor, and then I go Control R and I throw a little loop around there, pull that loop all the way back to the nose cone, and then if I hit N, and I can put a nice crease in there. Where is my crease? Oops. Where's my crease? Oh, here, it's under Transforms. Open that up, and I pull my crease to about 5 should be enough. So let's just have a little closer look at it. Tab out and position it. That looks sort of reasonable. Actually, I wonder if I shouldn't put another ring over there. Control R and grab along the y-axis and scale it in. Oops. Move my cursor to selected, scale it in. Let's have a little look what that looks like. Yeah, and another one, I think. Control R. There you go. That's starting to look better now. So we scale that in. Yeah, I think that looks better. Mind you, that's a little too much. Sorry, you know, these things take a little bit of time to get right. You play with that until you've got it where you want it. Alright, side view, and let's get a look at what we want to do with the tip. I think maybe it is a little too long, even for me. Likes to exaggerate things. That's just a bit too much. So grab it on the Y scale and bring it. Put in X-ray, box select, grab it on the Y scale, bring it in to about there. Right, now let's go extrude Y, and then let my cursor over there, cursor to selected, and scale it up just a little bit. Then extrude Y, scale it up a little bit, extrude Y, scale it up a little bit, and then extrude scale it down a little bit, extrude Y, scale it down a little bit, extrude Y. Anyway, you tweak it until you have the kind of tip that you want. After some tweaking, I decided that's the kind of tip that I want. You can make it round or sharp or pointy or whatever the case may be. Then a good idea is to sort of merge all those points in the middle. Merge is Alt M and merge at center. There you go. And that basically should do it for me as far as the antenna is concerned. Right, next up will be the hatchway, the entry hatchway, which we put over here somewhere. Right, so we fitted the doors. A little bit of tweaking that we have to do to make sure that it follows the contour of the hull. We put a little hatch or porthole in there, and that's our completed Steampunk Spaceship. The next step, of course, in video 2 will be to do the texturing. So we create a nice sort of interesting metal-like surface which fits with the genre of steampunk spaceships.